Thanks, Liz, so much. That's just amazing, you know. What wonderful truth and so succinctly crammed into a poem. It's fantastic. Thank you so much, Liz, for being here. You know,
Thank you for listening.
Oh, it's fantastic. I just want to say a couple of things very briefly. I went and got my huge shopping the other day. I was paying bills, paying this, paying rent, paying... It's like being torpedoed all the time. Torpedoed. It's like being strangled all the time. And fear is paralytic to consciousness and development in a human being, you know. And we're not blossoming into our full potential because we're completely in fear all the time, most people, right? And I just want to share this. I was on my way back, carrying my bags back from the supermarket or whatever it was, and it suddenly dawned on me, I thought, I'm paying for my mother's milk. I was born on this planet, okay? Yes, I've got the number that's been stamped on my head when I'm born, you know, and all the rest of it that they trade on the stock market, apparently. But I thought, you know, I'm born on this planet. This planet is my planet, our planet. I'm born on here. It's my home. It's my mother, and I'm being charged for my mother's milk and the electricity and the food and everything. And what I want to just say is that we're so brainwashed and conditioned that the thought of most people, anyway, the thought of having free food and free energy and free everything, it's almost, you can't hardly believe it could be possible. When you think of that, you know. There's a river down here. There could be those energy devices in the river. There could be, everyone could have free electricity because then we wouldn't be slaves. If you've got a stream in your garden, you can't put an energy device in it. You can't get free electricity. Why? Because the water's the government's, even the air is the government's. You can't, you know, it's unbelievable. I just wanted to say that, you know. And
UK PLC is the vehicle.
Yeah, yeah.
What's the great PLC? Who's claimed ownership of that company?
And people say, oh, well, it's not slavery. And I'm so excited at the moment. I've been waiting for this for 25 years, you know. I remember going to see David like 25 years ago with Louis, or longer. There was hardly anyone there, and this man was telling the truth then. But now there's like a smelling salts under people's noses. And it's so timely now. But, of course, when the truth is an enemy to a system, then you know that system is evil, right? And that's where we are now. The truth is, there's so much truth coming out that their only option now is to squash it on the internet. So it's like a geyser, the water that comes out of the earth. You put your hand on that one, it comes over there. You put your hand on that one, it comes over there. So it's like this, like look right. No? They can't stop the truth coming out now. And I still got to mention the Aaron Russo interview many years ago. He was a great documentary filmmaker, and I think Mad as Hell was one of his great documentaries. And he got friendly with Nick Rockefeller, and Nick Rockefeller said to him, Aaron, I think Aaron was saying, why are we being so cruel to humans? You've got everything you want, you know, you've totally enslaved humanity. And Nick Rockefeller said, no, Aaron. He said, we're going to microchip everybody. That's what we're going to do. That's our goal. Microchip everyone, total slavery. And that is coming. They're making the microchips now. They're trialing it in Sweden. They're trialing it here. And just like the internet, you won't be allowed to do any banking. The banks will be closed. You can only go on the internet. So if you don't go on the internet banking, you're finished, you know. Then it's cashless, you're finished, and then they can just switch off. You get the microchip. So it peeves me to think that they're making the microchips already. They're rolling it out. Quite soon you'll see it happening. If we don't stop it, the jobs, you won't get a job unless you get a microchip. So that continual cutting off your way of escaping the prison and the cage that you're being pressed into. And the other thing is, like, that's why I'm delighted that Liz talks so amazingly, is that often it can be easily be seen that we're free, but often you only know you're not free when you push against the tyranny, yeah? And it's like it only shows itself then, when you resist it.
I mean, ducked down.
Yeah. So it's like, well, come on, you're quite free, but you go against it, and it's like, get back, shut up, yeah? So I'm delighted now, you know, and then they're banning the truth. So the system's broken, as the beautiful poems have said. The system's broken, and so are the people living within it. Someone I know has just killed themselves. They committed suicide, and they couldn't stand it any longer. The funeral's this week, you know. I know the gentleman very well. The man was very kind to me, and we spoke openly about the system and the slavery. And it's just like, well, I'm out of here. And apparently there's an interesting thing about suicide, two interesting things. well, firstly, it's illegal, and you're not allowed to kill yourself, okay? So, you're not allowed to kill yourself because we own you. That's what they're saying. We own you. You're not even allowed to kill yourself because you're our property, and we'll tell you when you're going to leave here, you know. There's that number. We've still got a lot of money to be made on you, made off you while you're alive, you know. But the other thing about suicide, I just wanted to say, because it's becoming endemic now. People are killing themselves all the time in Wales. Apparently, about a week before, when you've decided to kill yourself, apparently someone becomes very happy and uplifted and almost overjoyed, and all the things they were depressed about sort of fall away. Why? Because they've suddenly thought, well, I'm leaving anyway. You know, I'm not advocating suicide, by the way. Don't. You might end up somewhere worse, or you might have to come back here and do it all again. But what I'm saying, imagine that. But although it's beautiful here as well, pockets of symbiosis go into nature. But what I'm saying is that you imagine that. So they've decided, I'm going to commit suicide, and all the depression sort of falls away from them because well, I'm leaving anyway. I'm going. I'm sick. I'm done. But you know, our system's based on fear and debt is preventing people blossoming. And thank God at last people are rising. You know, like thanks to you, you're putting the spell and salts on and helping people understand what it is that's making them depressed. You know, because I speak to people every day in my shop about it. They come and say, I'm really depressed. You know, I say good. They say good. I'm depressed. I'll say, well, yeah, because that's normal. It's a normal response from a healthy body, mind, and a system that's driving it mad and pushing a pillow on your face. So of course you're depressed, of course you're in despair, of course you're drinking every night, etc. It's a natural response. So I think we're at a great time now, that's what I just want to say, and I think it's very exciting now that actually people are feeling so ill and so desperate. That's fantastic, because that's a symptom, a human symptom, and it's ubiquitous everywhere now. So a lot of people are feeling it, and it's sometimes got to get that bad. Now, someone said to me the other day, oh, it's good because, you know, it's the pain. We should thank them almost because it's the pain that's waking us up. Now, come on, it's like, oh, thanks very much for punishing us and enslaving us. We want to just say thanks very much because we wouldn't have woken up otherwise. Oh, come on, you know. Let's not be put to sleep in the first place. So we've got to bring our children up not to be victims of victims and break that chain of victim. And this is where your work's coming in. It's so wonderful. And we're breaking the chain of victim, and there's a great awakening. Does anyone else want to say anything? Anyone else want to say anything while we're here?
I've found the top of the podcast. Thank you very much for that. Right. So, I'd like to share this mission statement, the Sovereign Property Alliance, in the public interest. To protect everyone's right to a home and to tackle effectively all injustices which surround the attempted violation of that fundamental right to property. To prevent and rout out all eviction, which is illegal and a tyrannical act of violence. To draw the focus to mediating and settling the accounting exercise through due process of law and meeting the burden of proof of an alleged debt, which prerequisite relates to all genuine property disputes. To preserve and guard the unalienable sovereign rights of all property owners and residential occupiers, whether tenants in common, landowners, leaseholders or otherwise, by applying the law through the Magna Carta, and in particular the Law of Property Act, Miscellaneous Provisions, 1989, and the Land Registration Act, 1925, which they've tried to replace with the LRA 2002, which is actually opening up the floodgates for a lot of fraud. To uphold the rule of law and ensure compliance with the court rules in relation to all property disputes, and to rout out all forms of corruption surrounding property matters. To subject every property claim to strict scrutiny under the Banker's Book Evidence Act 1879, to prove the existence of 1, a debt or a loan or mortgage on the bank's ledger, and the existence of the accounts or instruments used on the bank's ledger. 2, to provide compliant paperwork which meets the strict standards of the Law of Property Act, Miscellaneous Provisions, etc. 3, to carry out strict compliance regarding the conveyancing paperwork and process the land registry and involvement, the court process, and to put every claim to strict proof of both a valid claim and a righted claim with original documents in wet ink signatures. Because very often when they've securitized it or sold on the debt to someone else, you can't find the original because that went with the sale. So they've already got their money back. And the thing is, they keep getting the money back again and again and again, and they're doing it on your collateral. This is about the banks not being capitalized. You know, fractional reserve banking, they keep in reserve 1/10 of what they keep on processing again and again and again. It's a huge scam. To assist with appropriate prosecution and enforcement, as may prove necessary, against rogue bankers, rogue conveyancing solicitors, rogue judges, and other associated professionals who act in a predatory manner against property owners and who attempt to violate property owners' rights. The Sovereign Property Alliance can be viewed as a kind of independent scrutiny test on all property transactions and a means of public enforcement before one's peers. The best challenge for bullying banksters who got away with so much for so long. Foundation of facts relied upon. 1. All eviction, without exception, is illegal. It is an act of violence. It is also an act of violence, I should say. 2. The declared mission and stated purpose of the Sovereign Property Alliance is to protect everyone's right to a home. It also raises awareness, to raise awareness and bring about an understanding of how to achieve this. 3. What is rightfully yours may not be removed. A home is a sacred necessity to support all human life, which no one has the right to dispossess you of. 4. The key aim and objective of the Sovereign Property Alliance is to protect and preserve that right and to tackle effectively the injustices which surround the attempted violation of that fundamental right. 5. Part of that process is to curtail and proactively prevent all eviction on this premise because it is an illegal and unlawful act. 6. The remedy lays in that of reclaiming our innate sovereignty. Sovereignty is defined as a supreme power or authority. And I've put the link. Sovereignty is understood in jurisprudence as the full right and power of a governing body to govern itself without the interference from outside sources or bodies. In political theory, sovereignty is a substantive term designating supreme authority over some policy. 7. The fact is, the golden rule applies and everyone needs a home. It is a principle that the law exists to protect good men and women and to support our inalienable rights. No man or woman has the right to dispossess you or anyone else of their home. Our right to a home is the foundational structure of any civilized society. 8. Further, there is no basis in law whatsoever for anyone to be dispossessed from their legal rights as a residential occupier or owner or tenant or leaseholder in a property. This is grounded in the Magna Carta, Chapter 9, Paragraph 2, and I quote, "No man shall be deceased, that is, put out of season or dispossessed of his freehold, that is, lands or livelihood, or of his liberties, or free customs, that is, of such franchises and freedoms and free customs as belong to him by his free birthright, unless it be by lawful judgment, that is, verdict of his equals, that is, of men of his own condition, or by the law of the land, that is, to speak it once for all, by the due course and process of law." And further, on behalf of the people, we therefore invoke the authority of Clause 61 of the Magna Carta, which makes it clear that if the people are wronged by the Crown and no remedy is forthcoming after all steps have been exhausted, that the people may take whatever action is necessary to obtain satisfaction without fear of a reprisal. As Sir Winston Churchill wrote, A History of English-Speaking Peoples, 1956, quote, "The underlying idea of the sovereignty of the law, long existent in the feudal custom, was raised by it into a doctrine for the national state. And when in subsequent ages the state, swollen with its own authority, has attempted to ride roughshod over the rights and liberties of the subject, it is to this doctrine, the Magna Carta, that appeal has again and again been made, and never as yet without success." Unquote. Magna Carta 1215 and 1297, clause 61, which states, as repeated with great distinctness by Henry III, 1216, it shall be lawful for everyone in our realm to rise against the government, to use all the ways and means they can to hinder until that in which they have transgressed and offended shall have been brought again into due state. To put it simply, the law is there to protect property owners and residential occupiers from trespassers and not the other way round. Yet common practice involves a reversal of these roles through corruption and fear-mongering, building on people's ignorance or negligence, which many banks trade and bank upon. It frequently involves a gang culture and bullying tactics used to induce a state of paralytic fear and helplessness, mostly through an inequality of arms or ignorance of one's property rights. In common practice, however, the law is being misapplied and reversed, whereby the rightful occupier is being treated as the trespasser. As the following is occurring. A. Banks are claiming to be lenders, when in fact they lend nothing. This is a misdescription of terms and is misleading. B. It is merely a process whereby a bank issues credit. This is not the same as lending money. Anyone can issue credit as it is deemed lawful to do so. Banks are endowed with powers through charters that they do not deserve and should not and would not have if people understood the origins of money and the corrosive impact of debt-based currencies. Urgent monetary reform is needed. C. Banks historically use money as debt, issue money as debt. It is created upon the signature. All money, when transacted and handled lawfully, has to comply with the Bill of Exchange Act, 1882. D. This means that the banks issue money but do not have it in their reserves to lend. This is where the legal arena fosters contention and causes doubt and confusion, but the lawful arena preserves rights and does what is right. E. Their reserve comes from your asset, your home, which is a commodity of tangible value. The banks literally rely upon you gifting your home to them. When you grant a power of attorney via a lawfully drawn-up deed, witnessed by at least 2 independent witness signatures and executed in front of you, rarely does that happen. Common practice is that solicitors get you to forward date it, sign it, and all parties are not present in the room. And the Supreme Court case law of 2015, Lady Hale, said that all parties must be present in the room when they sign the deed, and there should be a wetting signature, and that's when it should be validly executed. And now the Land Registry has been sneaking through a new rule where they're using electronic deeds, which bypass that process, and it opens up fraud with a capital F. It's like, are we all asleep at the wheel? The process they're using is called fractional reserve banking system. They literally keep a small fraction of collateral seed capital in reserve to enable compliance with banking charters and ensure there is some money at least to underpin the transaction or issuance, which is then flipped or sold on multiple times at a deep discount into the financial marketplace, making money along the way. This process is repeated several times with each batch of seed collateral, which in turn creates a bubble of debt to occur. The more times it happens, the process is called collateralization. G. The FRBS, Financial Reporting, actually I need to check the exact acronym, requires collateral or seed capital. This is where your asset comes in. Technically, banks are misusing people's main asset, their homes, as collateral by purporting to grant a mortgage or a loan, when in fact all they're doing is allocating credit on a debt basis and gifting your property back to you with interest and costs. No bank has any intrinsic right to foreclose on an alleged loan or mortgage on this deceptive basis because they did not grant the mortgage in the first place and did not own the asset in the first place. You did. H. A mortgage, when literally translated in French, is a death grip. Mort, death, gage, hand. They deal you a dead hand. It frequently proves onerous or extremely difficult, if not impossible, for anyone being so granted such a product to extricate themselves. This is because people enter into these arrangements without having a proper or valid understanding of what they're getting into. Their eyes need to be opened. Frequently there is misselling involved and non-disclosure involved, and worse. I. This is because it's a catch-22 situation that has been created by banks and other financial institutions or predatory lending practices. Put simply, it is a debt-based currency issued as a credit, which is then used against one by requiring them to repay interest on the asset they already own, and for which they are provided collateral that supports the credit that's just been issued. Doesn't make sense, does it? This all comes down to the fact that debt-based currency is a fatally flawed product. It can only ever compound. By charging interest on a credit issuance, which is really a debt on a debt-based system, it's dangerous. It's creating a self-perpetuating indebtedness situation. That is why loan repayment vehicles were introduced several decades ago, but even these have been getting misused as well as being missold by the grantor. We're talking things like endowments and so on. How many people have found their endowment didn't cough up when they needed it to? The party granting the mortgage on the property owner is the mortgagor, yet banks are misapplying the term by calling themselves the mortgagors, when really they are the mortgagees, the one receiving the mortgage transaction to make money from. The misapplication of the law is frequently misdescribing the property owner as the mortgagee instead, when this is the opposite of the truth. The mortgagee is the alleged lender, but the term lender itself is a misnomer and is misleading because banks, as I said earlier, do not lend money, they merely issue credit. In this way, banks and building societies are the party who is trespassing and yet are treating the rightful residential occupier as the trespasser, and they're using the forms which only a landlord has got the right, the equitable title holder, to invoke. This is a reversal of truth and is a scam which must be exposed and any practice of it immediately curtailed. It is because of treating the rightful residential occupier and owner as the trespasser that illegal eviction occurs. It could not otherwise occur, as the landlord and residential occupier is the party that is entitled to protection, not the bank who does not lend anything, but merely capitalises on the asset belonging to you as the grantor or mortgagor. The only remedy to settle a property dispute lawfully is to get the party alleged to have suffered a loss or harm or indebtedness due to an alleged default to prove their debt. And they've never done that in our case. They can't prove a debt that doesn't exist. The proving of a debt in all property disputes is what the law requires. It is purely an accounting exercise in point of fact. This requires that any allegation of a debt must be proven forensically. This requires the debt to exist in the first place. Hey, how about that? This conundrum comes because the currency that was issued allegedly in the misnamed borrower's favour is really a credit that's been issued in the mortgagor's name, the grantor, the mortgagor's loan, who is in effect facilitating a loan to himself in the banking institution's name instead of his own name. This is covered by POA, power of attorney, clause which must be contained within the wording of the deed that is granted by the mortgagor, in effect gifting the home to the bank. Yet rarely is this clause disclosed or explained, because otherwise no one would agree to gifting the home in effect to the bank. That's why it always says you must seek legal advice before you sign this deed. Now they're doing away with it and having electronic deeds. We're all in danger. They're stealing our property on a huge scale. And where is it? Where are they all going? To the state. Is it because they know the banks are going to crash and they're trying to use our properties as a hedge? Maybe. Those working in the professions, banking, legal, financial advisors, accounting, etc., are frequently resorting to tricks of the trade to dupe the public into entering into unconscionable bargains, which, if full and proper disclosure were given, people would not agree to proceed on such basis. Often, with knowing they have no real debt and knowing they have no compliant or lawfully valid paperwork, solicitors, etc., will often resort to using non-disclosure as a means to gain a tactical advantage in court. That's what's happened to us. We've never had disclosure of a contract or a debt or anything. Since it is not logically possible to defend something that is not defined due to non-disclosure. This is fraud by non-disclosure. That's what's happened to us. We've had 10 years of it. We're up to here with it. And judges are still ignoring it. The police are telling you it's civil and they don't want to know. How about that? This usually takes the form of no valid contract or loan agreement, which fails to comply with the law because it lacks any exit or repayment vehicle, for example. Every contract has to have an exit and it has to have a repayment vehicle, and that's what defines it as a contract. Without that, it's not a contract. They haven't got a contract with us, and yet it shouldn't even be in the court, wrong arena, and they've bastardised our courts by calling it civil fraud. All fraud is criminal. There is no such thing as civil fraud, in actual fact. It's a con. All civil courts rely on contract law, so there has to be a valid contract to enforce. Without this, there is nothing to enforce, and so no prospects of success. This, however, does not seem to deter many rogue professionals who have perfected their tricks to an astounding degree of chicanery. They use distraction techniques, technicalities, falsify evidence, mislead, perjure, even forge documents in order to gain advantage. We even had a High Court of Appeal judgment falsified. And when I challenged it this year, it disappeared. It disappeared. And it had been created by a barrister who got promoted to QC for doing it. And I knew it was forged and false because he turned our parties round. And I said, here's the order, here's the original claim. Here's the proof £1,500 court fee was paid in 2008. Here's the proof we're the claimants, the bank is the defendant. Why does this judgment say that we're the defendant? Nobody talked to me. But I got the delivery manager from the Court of Appeal on tape saying there's no record of any judgment or hearing. And yet I went before 3 High Court of Appeal judges, Lloyd, Jackson and Laws, LJ, on the 10th of October and the 20th of December 2012. What the hell was going on? These crooked solicitors and barristers arranging court hearings which aren't on the court record, shadow courts again. False claims are often peddled through the courts. This is money laundering. And a fraud upon the court is committed when the solicitors know, or ought to know, that they do not comply with the law nor the court rules. Being forewarned is forearmed. The education process regarding these things is paramount. The mission of the Sovereign Property Alliance, or SPA, is to provide a cooperative structure of protection through education within a confusing and complex system which bases itself and relies upon many undisclosed clauses and presumptions that are slipped into place by default, which can unlawfully dispossess you of your right to call home. SPA exists as a charitable organisation and foundation to offer an opportunity of membership to all homeowners and rightful occupiers of properties which are privately owned and used for residential purposes. This is with a view to helping protect the properties against white-collar fraud and to help serve their interests against corruption and outside interference. Specifically, the vital evidence, which of course we are legally and lawfully entitled to see and access, and which would answer the one fundamental core question, show me the money, has never been answered and has never been produced after 14 years. This vital evidence would comprise a compliant mortgage or loan contract at the very least. Every valid property transaction has to have a valid and compliant mortgage or loan contract bearing wetting signatures of an authorised representative of the bank and of each of the purported mortgagors, which must also contain terms and conditions in the agreement to include evidence of a valid service of the alleged mortgages, which demonstrates a power of attorney and right of sale, as per Section 2 of the Law and Property Act, Miscellaneous Provisions 1989. A complete and valid mortgage deed bearing the wetting signatures of the purported mortgagors and independent witness must have attested to those signatures at the moment of the deed's execution, in accordance with Section 1.3 of the 1989 Act, has to exist. Land registry is bypassing all of this at the moment and nobody's challenging it. It doesn't seem to be getting talked about. The entire office copy entry of the purported mortgage and its related registration documents and land register must also be accessible for production and proof. I asked for the addition, which would have proven what happened to my money that they stole, and the land registry wouldn't let me have it, and said that I had to get a court order or police to apply, and then the police were already shut down by the criminals, wouldn't help me, and the courts were running shadow courts with fake claim numbers, so they've got you. They've got you in a loop of deception. This is what's happening to innocent people like us. There needs to be verifiable material evidence that the bank actually had the funds in their own accounts and loaned them at the time of the purported loan being made or alleged to have been made. There needs to be material evidence, including the actual verifiable original hard copy entries on the original audited ledger and bookkeeping records that proves that the funds were actually received and accessible to the alleged mortgagors. Material evidence that the bank has validly issued possession proceedings against the alleged mortgagors or conducted any valid pre-action protocol and valid service of supporting documentary evidence, which they never seem to do. CPR 2.6 bearing a court seal and Part 55, both in substance and in form. Not one without the other. Often they go through the outer form but don't have the substance in the papers. The bank has to be able to meet, under the penalty of perjury, valid material evidence that the bank were or are claiming that a verifiable mortgage debt is due and outstanding and has instructed the solicitor's firm to collect on that alleged basis. They never do. They never can meet these tests. A mortgagor at all times has the right to ask the mortgagee for material disclosure of the documents, the special purpose vehicles, third-party agreements or contracts or arrangements that mention the mortgagors by name in any way refer to in respect of this matter. The burden of proof also applies to any reference made to the mortgagors as the ultimate beneficiaries or owners of the purported stakeholding under the direction and/or control of any investment administrated by them. Under our rights afforded to us under the Banks Book Evidence Act, we need to demand at an early stage of proceedings instigated against one to see verifiable, documentary, written and audited evidence that the mortgage or loan exists and that the accounts used to link to that mortgage also exist. Astonishingly, news always they do not. If a trading entity is involved, check it was validly incorporated and approved for trading by the chairman and board of directors of the bank concerned. If a third party is involved, you do not have to deal with them as they're not a party to the case, and you have to prove that they are a party to the case. The necessary burden of proof must be met that all transactions were due and compliant to pass through the ledger of the bank concerned, the PLC version. In other words, who is the stakeholder, who is the fund holder? They often sell on debts to third parties, and you end up dealing with shell companies, and this is how they just think they've got the right to walk all over people. All mis-selling, potential mis-selling, needs very careful scrutiny. Any form of solicitation or inducements must be taken fully into account. A date for inspection of the original ledger of the bank to verify these material evidence in the form of bookkeeping entries from the bank's mortgage book, which must be disclosed under the penalty of perjury by the chief auditor for the bank, demonstrating that the monies claimed were received and fully at all times without any form of encumbrance by a third party by the purported mortgagors. Moreover, material evidence which must be given under penalty of perjury by an authorised representative of the bank demonstrating purported mortgage arrears have not been capitalised. Material evidence which must be given under penalty of perjury by an authorised representative demonstrating the purported mortgage has not been securitised or rehypothecated. Does anyone know what rehypothecation is? It's when the borrower borrows from you. So you're actually the one lending the asset and they're borrowing against it, but they're not telling you. And this is what's happening, they're rehypothecating. They've taken out 7 loans on my house. I didn't sign a single one of them. I've got no contract for a single one of them. They stripped more than the equity of my estate. I got the shock of my life when I went to land registry in 2016 and found this all out. This is how I know all of this. This is the game of banking. This is the banking game they're playing. They keep going on about... There's a film coming out, by the way, in the new year called Spank the Bankers. Anyone heard about it? Spank the Bankers. Samia Mohammed, I think. Interesting title. It's like we just don't... We've been conditioned from birth to believe that, you know, we're debtors. I was really... Has anyone heard of step change? Anyone?
Charity.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a charity. Have you ever heard of a charity that acts on assumptions and doesn't check anything? There's no checks and balances to check that you are actually a debtor. They don't check the debt exists and that it's your debt. They just go on the presumption that you are a debtor, and if you're coming to them because you've been bankrupted, and then they put you into IVA and they force you down the wrong road. It's like leaning your ladder, you're painting the wrong house. You know, this is what's happening. This is a government quango, step change. I spent 2 hours on the phone challenging them and saying, do you check that the person is a debtor? Do you ever check? How can you be calling us debtors when in actual fact the liability is with the accuser? So, you know, we've got to change our whole approach. If we were all united and we all say, right, we've all got one common denominator, we've got a right to our home. You know, the other thing that the con that they're doing, the land registry advertises, register your property and protect it from fraud. Big lie. It's a big, big lie. The minute you register your property, you're gifting your alloidium title, ALLODIUM for mother, to the Crown. And they're exchanging it for an alloidial title, which is actually made up. Alloidial title is like calling you a tenant in common. You're a tenant on your freehold. What do you mean? Tenant. Queen does not own your freehold. The monarch is no longer sovereign. She promised to govern the people in accordance with their rights and customs at the coronation and her oath. Is that happening? What about the Lisbon Treaty? She sold our rights down the river to the EU, to a foreign party. Parliament is no longer sovereign. That's been confirmed by the Department of Constitutional Affairs. I've seen it in black and white. These are fundamental issues, which is why things are playing out in the way they are. We've got to get back to basics and really look at what we're doing, you know. When we acquiring property, and when our child is born, why do we automatically register our child? They tell us it's a criminal offence not to register your child. But when you register your child, you're actually giving them over as a product of the state. You're giving the state as a caretaker. The state is an artificial persona. It's a concept. You know, we are the sovereigns. We are the sovereign people. And as I said, the monarch is no longer sovereign because the rights have been sold down the river. And even the Queen herself has said, you know, there are some very dark forces in play. We need to find out what are those dark forces. Peter Oban from the Daily Mail wrote a very interesting article about the shadowy, sinewy Privy Council. Does anybody know about the Privy Council?
Yes.
Did you know they started off with about 37 people? I believe a few years ago it was 600 and something members. They meet apparently every fortnight with the Queen. I think it's in Draper's Hall. And they pass laws with a show of hands, bypassing the electorate. We've got a dual government running. We're told that we have a democracy. So that means all the stuff going on and talking shop in Parliament is trumped by what's happening with the Privy Council, which is private. Privy Council, I believe, are often behind these false judgments that get written out before the hearing.
Well, all the senior judges are Privy Councillors.
There you go, Privy Councillors.
They meet at Windsor Castle.
Before the hearing starts, the judge has got the verdict there in front of him. So where's the due process? Where's your right, your Article 6 rights to a fair hearing? They ain't happening. And this is a con. This is extrinsic fraud. It's when the very judicial machinery upon which we all have come to rely and been told to rely is breaking down. It's breaking down in front of our eyes. And then you wonder, well, we're not getting justice in the courts. But are they courts? Or are they just rigged places of business, places of commerce? Look at the court fees. They went up 600% a couple of years ago. And now they're having to shut the courts down because there's so much corruption. And you know, now they say that any county court claim has to be issued through the Central Court in Manchester. How many people know that? How many county courts are still purporting to issue their own claims, bypassing the system? Lord Chancellor, where are you? David Goke is responsible for the way our courts are being run. He's responsible for the lack of independence of judges. You know, take a look on Wikipedia and look up the duties of the Lord Chancellor. Got massive duties. And methinks he's not very awake. Something's going horribly wrong, and I think a lot of the suffering that's going on in the country can be dealt with if we would just have an honest airing of the truth, instead of these politicians all controlling the shops and, you know, feathering their own nests and making sure they're all right, Jack. And, you know, why is it when the bank's committing fraud at board level, you're told that because you live in Weymouth, you can't get protection because the fraud's happened in Manchester? You say, but hang on, it's the same bank. You know, why can't the police forces work cooperatively together? You know, we have the HMI CFRS who are responsible for how policing is done. I contacted them and they were talking about the area manager in charge of the Dorset region, but they said they can do nothing. And she said, you're a victim of enormous corruption. She wrote me a letter. Huge corruption, but she didn't offer to sort it. She was more saying, not me, Gov, pass it on to the next man. They're all doing that. Nobody's accountable. We're dealing with artificial persona, corporations. You know, we, the sovereigns, gave them that power. We have to take our power back and reconstruct things. We need a new system. You know, there must be a better way than this. We weren't meant to spend our whole lives fighting corruption and fighting false claims and fake debts and, you know, working like slaves and treading water and being ducked down by people with vested interests. There must be a better way than this. And I believe there is a better way. I love the model in Iceland. I love what the Icelandic people did. You know, they absolutely took control. I visited Iceland. I love it. Has anyone been to Iceland? Great atmosphere, isn't it? music festivals, very expensive for restaurants.
They did after the bankers, I'm not quite done anything.
Sorry?
After the place collapsed, which it just about did, 10 years ago, what did they actually do to change it so much?
They put the bankers in jail, they took the power back to the people, they pretty much told the government they were sacked, the majority rule took over, and they've got a really strong economy now. I don't know the ins and outs, but I know the principle was that we, the majority, took action. We have to do the same.
And the most important thing was that they refused to allow the state to take over the debt from the banks.
Yes,
Which is where with us in 2008 we all got lumbered with the debt.
They let the banks fail. This is a very interesting point. Lloyd's Banking Group, does anybody know that before the merger with HBOS, acronym for Health Bankers Organising Stealth, my acronym, did you know that they had a secret bailout from the Bank of England for £25.7 billion in 2008, and then they did the merger? That meant that they were trading while they were insolvent. How can you merge an insolvent bank with a going concern? What the heck was going on?
Well, the public still own 85% of that bank anyway.
Which was the way the Treasury clawed back the bailout from the public, because we muggins, without even having a say, ended up being the bailies on the Treasury. Con of the century. So they privatised the profits and publicised the losses. We've all been conned. This is a massive con. You're talking about the rights issue in the Greeks report. I spent some time with the Dobbs report recently and saw the QC. You know, they know what's going on. They know the bank is trading whilst insolvent. They know the rot is at board level. Has anyone seen Noel Edmonds' brilliant approach to Lord Blackwell and how he said, you know, and he said, this isn't a game show, Mr. Edmonds. And Noel said, if it's a case of jail or no jail, you're heading in the right direction.
Old boy. Yeah. I liked how he called him old boy.
Old boy, yeah, Norman old boy.
Norman
I love Noel Evans, he's brilliant. And I've got a lot of respect for him. He rang me earlier this year and we had a long chat. He's doing a lot of good work. The thing is not to take on the lies they put on us and get dark thoughts. He went through huge depression like so many people. They just feel like topping themselves. But actually, the burdens have been put on you because somebody's been perjuring themselves. Somebody's been laundering. Somebody's been conning you through the courts, that they're courts, and they're actually not. They're private places of business. And then we find out that the claim numbers are fake and the rooms are just privately hired. You know, this is a horrible, grotesque situation of corruption.